All right, welcome to another Crypto Spendthrift interview session. I'm here with Michael Alden, and primary topic is going to be about mining, but we'll also learn a bit more about him. So start off a bit, talk about yourself, because you're kind of a little bit different from my typical people that I interview. You've come from it seems like you have a vast experience in another industry, and I kind of want to talk about that before we deep dive into the crypto side of things.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I have a pretty unique background. I'm an attorney by trade. I grew up in the business world, in the world of direct response, primarily long form infomercials. We do radio, a little bit of internet, and then all other forms of direct marketing from direct mail, which still actually works really well, to email, to now things like voicemail drops or text messaging. So I kind of grew up in this space and selling products and services that have had a positive impact on people's lives, from dietary supplements to books to even real estate programs, how to make money in real estate. And we're actually right now, literally, we're testing one right now. I think we're one of the first ones to do it here in the United States. We have a long form infomercial about cryptocurrency, just to really educate people about cryptocurrency. And so that's kind of just a quick thumbnail sketch of what I've been doing and kind of where I'm at today.
So what initially got you into crypto? So why are you making this kind of additional thing to your repertoire?
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting story, So in 2014, as an entrepreneur, I am in a lot of different things. I own a vodka. I backed an artist, and there was this artist. His name is Blake Emery. He's a good friend of mine, and I just loved his artwork, and I just felt as though that the world needed to see it. So I decided I was going to, take that world on and make him famous. Well, I was wrong, but during that time, we did some great things. I mean, I got him in Art Basel, which is the largest art show in the world, and we were in Miami and LA and New York. I mean, we're definitely doing some good things. But at the time, this was 2014, he said, Mike, you can pay me in Bitcoin, because we had a deal where I basically would pay him to do some artwork, And I said, I have no idea what Bitcoin is, And he starts to explain it to me, and I'm like, I'm good, man. This is like not my thing. I don't get it. I don't understand it. And, I just kind of just brushed it off, And that was 2014. And throughout the years, I've had, the opportunity to be able to, to hang around with business rock stars, with entrepreneurs, with people that have been in rooms with billionaires, and started to hear about this term cryptocurrency, and a lot of people associate that term with Bitcoin, And the last thing that really kind of set me over the edge, I was at the Wynn Towers at the Wynn Hotel in Las Vegas, which is the private area of the Wynn, and Steve Wynn walked by, and I'm with a couple other pretty big influencers, and we were just talking about the blockchain, right? And I didn't even know what the blockchain was, and we're talking about Bitcoin, and we're talking about cryptocurrency, and they were. Everyone was kind of educating each other about it, but none of us really knew what we were talking about, but we knew that it was something big. And so that was about 8 months ago, and I came back here to Boston, and I said, man, I got to learn about this. And when I really started to study, the world of cryptocurrency, it really just dawned on me, and it hit me so hard. I realized that this truly is the biggest opportunity of my lifetime, because, I just turned 43. So I was around during the dot-com boom, right? But during the dot-com boom, I was fresh out of college. I was actually selling cars. I was on my way to law school. And then, the dot-com boom was still there when I was in law school. So I was broke there. And then after that, you had a real estate boom in the, in the early 2000s. And I didn't have, I was fresh out of law school, so I wasn't making a lot of money. So I wasn't able to participate in that. I certainly wasn't able to participate in IPOs, because I didn't have money. I joke around. I said an IPO, it's called an initial public offering, right? It should be called an initial private offering. And then when I saw, this whole thing of like ICOs, but really, the first thing that really got me excited about cryptocurrency, really was one, the ease in which anybody can get involved. But then two, for me as an entrepreneur who processes millions and millions of dollars every year with credit card processing, I said, man, I wonder if there's a way where I could have a more symbiotic relationship with my customer, a one-on-one relationship, cutting out the banks, going down this world of decentralization that the world of cryptocurrency is really the foundation of it. I wonder if I can do that, and I wonder what it would look like, and I wonder if my customers would appreciate it. And so we started doing that, and I started to think about, the long-term benefits, not only to me, but to them. And that's really how I started getting involved in cryptocurrency. And then from there, it just kept growing. I'm building out a mining operation right now. We have a mining operation. I have this big call center that I don't even use anymore because it's just the way technology works. But I have all this space, and I'm like, what am I going to do with this space? So I started buying ASIC machines, and we started building our own GPUs and graphics cards machines, and for mining, all these different things. And so every single day, I'm like everybody else. I'm kind of learning it as quickly as I can. You got these guys that are out there that are claiming to be experts. I mean, how many experts can we really have? I'm not an expert. I'll tell you. Hopefully you guys don't think I'm an expert. I'm not an expert, but I am an expert in business, and I feel like I'm pretty smart at being able to identify an opportunity, and that's why I'm so excited to be on the show, because regardless of what people do, they just need to pay attention, because it truly is the biggest opportunity of their lives.
I'm glad you're really stressing that point, because previous interview that I just got off with, we were talking about how blockchain is applicable for so many industries. And their particular product was building the infrastructure for turning databases to have blockchain verification. But still, they were like, there are so many people we could work with. It's just crazy. And the applications would range from auditing and financial situations, regulatory situations, government verification to supply chain. It was crazy how much blockchain can revolutionize so many different industries.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. When you start, at first I didn't even know what blockchain was. But then when I started to think about how, now depending on the type of blockchain that you're dealing with, but primarily, what most people say blockchain, they're thinking about the public blockchain, like Ethereum or the Bitcoin blockchain, right? So the coolest part about that, right, is that if you're an entrepreneur like myself and you did have an idea or some sort of application that you want to solve a problem with, because the whole world is open source, you can actually, everyone knows you can use the Ethereum blockchain for that, because they're more suited for things like applications, versus Bitcoin is more geared towards the movement of currency, right? And so, but it's there. It's you don't even need to develop it, and that's exciting. I started to think about I have all these ideas, how we could make our own, create our own application as well, and we're kind of going down that path as well, and it's so exciting. See, if you have an idea in the past, right? For instance, in the beginning of the internet boom, right? So if you had an idea of a website, well, if you weren't a programmer, you probably didn't know what to do. So you have to go out and hire somebody, and you have to kind of figure it out, and they got to write code, and they got to do all this other stuff to get your website up and running. This is early stages of the internet, right? It was just like anything else. It was just a lot of work. Now, there's still work involved, but most of the work is done for you if you're using, pre-made blockchain. There are liftings done. All the heavy lifting's done. I mean, there are private blockchains that are, like drug companies are doing it and financial institutions are doing it. But if you and I wanted to, solve a problem using the Ethereum blockchain, we can, and that's awesome.
Relating back to you mentioning the .com boom, I can kind of relate to you since I'm on the younger side, and I can see, I can have that historical comparison, and be yeah, there's a lot of opportunity, and people my age in their 20s are really more interested in technology and blockchain than anything else right now, especially compared to the past year. 2017 was the big year, I think, for people to recognize the real potential of blockchain and crypto compared to the past.
Yeah, I mean, so you're right. I mean, so people that are in their 20s now, it's almost like, so my daughter is going to be 12, so she's grown up with the cell phone, right? And so so it's like an extension of her body, right? And that's just her generation, and that's what's going on. And so if you almost same thing with you. I mean, you probably had a cell phone when you were probably 10 years old, 11 years old, just like my daughter. And so there are things culturally that are shifting in our world, and it's happening so fast. And so I'm 43, but I'm also, I try to stay on top of things, and I'm fascinated by the world of business and how quickly things can happen. And the other thing why I'm so excited is because of the fact that the dot-com era and the dot-com boom wasn't available to me. The real estate booms prior to that wasn't available to me. IPOs weren't available to me, right? And the real estate world even after that wasn't available to me because I just didn't have the resources. I'm not a handy guy. I can barely swing a hammer. So all these things that people benefited from just wasn't there for me. What's exciting about the world of cryptocurrency, and using that term in a broad sense, is that anybody can get involved. So if you want to get involved with an ICO, right? And you do your research. I think there are best practices that people really need to follow in that world. But let's say you read the white paper, you did your due diligence, you looked at this company, you like the problem they're trying to solve, you feel as though that they're real, you've done, you're taking a look at the people behind it, and then you decide that you wanted to invest in an ICO, you can. And so that world is changing. That window is closing because of the regulatory aspect of it, which actually is a good thing because most people are just buying on hype and they're going to get hurt, But right now, and even in the future, you're going to be able to do that without having to have any sort of brokerage account, without having to have a relationship with a big financial institution because of the world of decentralization. And that's exciting, man. Like, you know what I mean? So okay, so Snapchat, right? I remember when Snapchat, now I probably could have figured out a way to get involved in Snapchat because of where I'm at in life, but I didn't, but most people couldn't have, Facebook IPO, same thing. I probably could have, but most people didn't. And to be honest with you, it just wasn't that exciting to me. When I think about the like I said, the general application, like you mentioned, of blockchain as it's going and how it's changing the world, it's like I tell people sometimes I feel like I'm in a movie and I'm looking down from above and just looking like and saying, I just can't believe that I'm alive at this time so that I can really capture it and benefit it. And so I've been screaming about cryptocurrency and about not necessarily the blockchain, just about cryptocurrency to my friends first, like, guys, please pay attention to this. I know you don't understand it. I didn't understand it either. I'm a lawyer, and math isn't my thing, science isn't my thing, but you need to pay attention to it. Whether you do anything in it or not, whether you invest in Bitcoin or whatever. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about, please just pay attention to it, because if you don't, you will get left behind.
Very true. So going back to you mentioned the ICO, the regulatory is coming down, but there's people have been finding ways to kind of circumvent that, because you're seeing a rise of popularity of ICO pools and people getting around the whole KYC process using those. And I'm sure once other more decentralized solutions happen, people will probably find a way. It's just the regulatory aspect is going to be very difficult for governments to deal with in this sphere.
Yeah, I agree. And I tell this story. When I was in law school, I was sitting in a class for consumer protection. This is a true story, and people might not like to hear it, but it's just a fact. And again, the class was consumer protection, and my professor was a top level attorney over at the FTC, and she drew a line on the board, and on the left hand side it said, it started out, I think it just said affluent people, and then we went in a couple spots over. She started moving to the right and said, affluent, smart people, and then it said, PhDs, and then the spectrum started to go the opposite direction, and then I went all the way down to the other side of the spectrum, and it said dumb people. This is just true. This is real. This is real. Okay. And she said, who do you think that the FTC protects? Right? Everyone knew the answer. She circled dumb people. And I hate to say it, but it's just a reality. And it's not that people are dumb. It's just they lack the fundamental knowledge and the fundamental information to make a rational, informed decision. And so the government, their job is to come in and protect those people. Right. So that's why the aspect is there. And that's why it's not necessarily a bad thing. Yeah. If you got people that are trying to, to get around the, accredited investor and know your client stuff so yeah, that's going to happen. And if people really wanted to invest in an ICO and they're here in the United States and you got all these ICOs that say, well, we don't take American money, but yet you're advertising right here in the United States. It's crazy. I mean, come on. Who are we kidding? Who are we kidding here? So yeah. I mean, there are a lot of people that are doing a lot of things, but the fact of the matter is that there are a lot of great ICOs that are doing a lot of really cool things that the average everyday person, like you said, these pools, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, if you just wanted to throw $50 at it, you could. You can't do that in the stock market. So you can do that now. And you know what? I I say this, and this is a real number, and I know you know it, but I've been saying it for a while. But $1 invested in Bitcoin in 2009 at the height of Bitcoin's price in December of 2017, that $1 was then worth close to $32 million. That's a real number. I mean, it's not made up. And people say, well, how do you get to that number based off of what it really costs to mine Bitcoin at the time as far as the electricity? On any given day in December of 2009, $1 invested in essentially in electricity was netting you 1,600, 1,500, 1,700 Bitcoin a day. So that will happen again within the world of ICOs. It's just a matter of which one. And so pick your horse. But when you pick your horse, unlike going to the racetrack and just blindly picking something, do your research. And that's why I actually wrote a book about it, and I started the book saying, look, I'm not an expert about it. There are certain things, basic principles that even come from the world of investing. And again, I'm not an investment advisor. I don't have my Series 7 license, but it's just basic stuff that people, as human beings, rational thought goes out the window when money's involved, and that's how people get hurt. And so I'm just trying to say, look, man, pay attention to it, learn about it, do your research, and get involved, however it is. Because it's also creating. I forget who it was, but I had someone on my podcast, and they said to me, look, Mike, industries are being created right now that we don't even know about. And that's exactly what's happening within the world of cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency and crypto assets or the blockchain and this technology is creating industries that doesn't even exist right now, which is creating opportunity. It might not necessarily create jobs, because a lot of times it actually might even cut jobs out, but it's just creating opportunity. So paying attention to it is what people need to do so that they can capitalize if they feel as though, they can do it, because there's risk too, right? Yeah. You could lose everything. Vitalik, is it Buterin? Is that how you say his last name from Ethereum? I mean, and Charlie Lee said the same thing. These guys, they come out and they say, hey, Litecoin could go to zero and Ethereum could go to zero. That drives me a little insane, because these guys are, they're software engineers, they're programmers, they're not really hardwired to be CEOs, so to speak, right? Yeah. So if a CEO of a public company ever said that, they'd get fired in a second. You know what I mean? So they create, and they're by the way, and they're trying to not create FUD, right? Fear, uncertainty, and doubt, but yet they're doing it by making these crazy statements. So it's just you know what it is. Again, it comes down to just paying attention, man. Just pay attention. Yeah.
I think that's one of the facts why Facebook and I think even Google now are kind of cutting any kind of crypto ads, or being very, very picky with the ones that actually manage to get through. Because I've seen so many situations with Facebook where it's like this Facebook ad for some ICO ended up scamming a bunch of people. Then like people who are deeper into crypto never even heard of this ICO or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a smart move. It created, as someone who advertises, I hope that it doesn't ripple across the entire advertising industry, because I think that would have a severe detrimental effect on the industry as a whole. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of talk, like any industry, about standards and practices that are going to be created from a self-regulatory standpoint, right? So, you create the self-governing board, and that's happening already, and you have just your own standards and practices that everybody within this world follows, and you kick out bad actors. There's always going to be, in any new industry, there's always going to be bad actors, but you create that framework, you create that guild, so to speak, that if people want to be involved, then they have to adhere to the certain rules and regulations, so that it gives the entire industry a better name. See, I mostly sell dietary supplements. I've been doing it for a long time, and to be candid with you, I'm always put in a group of individuals that are just bad actors because of how I sell things. I've been in business for 10 years, generated hundreds of millions of dollars. I'm an attorney by trade. I have a family. I have employees. We do the right thing. We've always done the right thing. But I'm constantly fighting for my life to try and say, no, I'm not like those guys, because I'm not. But unfortunately, I'm just put in that, within that, there's just that grouping. Now, that grouping used to be much worse, and through self-regulatory bodies, it's cleaned up a lot. But I'm still put in that, and I have like a scarlet letter on me because of how we sell things. That happens within any industry, and once the industry starts to self-regulate, things will kind of calm down a little bit, and the bad actors will be kicked out.
Yeah, I'm already kind of seeing it starting to happen more and more in crypto. And there's a recent podcast that I just released with this CEO, co-founder of X-Trade, and he was talking about how he himself was from Wall Street and how all these other Wall Street guys are kind of bringing in some of the regulatory framework that they have to deal with to kind of like help self-regulate a lot of these other blockchain and cryptos, exchanges especially, because exchanges have been since they're one of like the most central point of failure that could happen.
Yeah, I mean, so when you put in standards and practices, they'll evolve over time. What you do is you kick out bad actors, and a lot of times, because I'm an attorney by trade, I've dealt with self-regulatory entities throughout my career, and sometimes they're just overzealous and they're just way over the top, and they go above and beyond what the law requires, and there's a point where it just becomes just too much. Yeah. But at the same time, if you do have just a basic set of rules that everyone needs to adhere to, it does just kind of clean things up. And then what it does as well is that now you're keeping the government body outside of your life, and you're able to to conduct business in a way that you want to conduct business without, again, the interference of the government. In fact, one of the things I'm working on right now is I'm working on essentially a political action committee that will help the world of cryptocurrency, because I've been to Washington, I've lobbied for stuff before, and we're putting that together right now, because I feel as though that this industry could use some strong lobbying in Washington D.C. and that this is the first time I publicly actually said it, because I think my attorney said not to say it, but we're working on that anyway, because I can. From how I advertise and how I market, I can educate the masses through the world of television, through the world of radio, and then obviously, you got a little bit of internet stuff going on. But I can literally hit millions and millions of households every single day, 24 hours a day, and just educate people. I sit down like what you're doing right now on the podcast and what I do on the podcast, and let's be candid here. We don't, I had Lewis Howes on my podcast, and I can connect with him, and he's getting millions and millions of downloads, or Gary Vee, or all these other guys, but we're not hitting that many people. Yeah. How I advertise, I can hit millions of people, and so again, we're working on, a lobbying aspect to educate our regulators as well. I mean, I don't know if you watched that hearing at the Senate hearing in the Senate Finance Committee. If you had
summaries of it.
Oh, you got to watch it, man. It was surreal. It was surreal what happened. I couldn't believe it. And the reason why Bitcoin, I was in Aruba when it was happening, and Bitcoin was just plummeting, and I just kept hitting the buy button, and then all of a sudden, they said, they all started to, you could just tell that they were all essentially for it. Well, I was like, wow, like it was like, you couldn't believe what was going on. And it was like, what, man, it's about time these guys got with the, truly with the times, and they understood it. But at the same time, they know they got to do their job. And so there is a a balance there, and I think the United States sees it, and they're going to work with the world of cryptocurrency to make it just a better opportunity.
Yeah, a lot of people were definitely surprised about the reaction from that Senate hearing. A lot of people thought it was going to be a lot harsher regulation, especially since the U.S. hasn't really been as pro crypto as a lot of other countries.
Yeah, I mean, so the head of the CFTC, I mean, he opens it up with he's like, look, his name is Christopher, I think it's Giancarlo, I think.
Yeah, Giancarlo.
Yeah, and so he says, I know I have a prepared statement, but I have 3 college-age students, and he tells the story about how he opened up brokerage accounts for them in high school, which, by the way, in and of itself, I think violates the law, but that's a whole nother thing. Opens up brokerage accounts for his high school-age children. They weren't interested in the stock market, and one son was interested in a gaming company, but for the most part, they had zero interest. And then he said, then something changed, and that was Bitcoin. And then I'm waiting for the hammer to drop again, because now I was just like, all right, it's a good story, and I'm waiting for him to say, and Bitcoin ruined their lives. That's what everybody was waiting for. And then he went on to say, no, we owe this generation our due respect, and we owe them the respect that is due to this world of cryptocurrency and virtual assets, because this is where the future is going. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but that's essentially what he said, and people were like, holy shit. I mean, there's no other, like, I was in a room, I was watching live, I couldn't believe what he just said, and it was nuts. But it was great because he also, I looked at his history a little bit. I guess he was a programmer, back in the day. So he's hip to what's going on. And then, you get that senator who made a bunch of money in the wireless industry. And he said, look, I've made millions of dollars in the wireless industry in the 80s when everybody said I was crazy and who would want a wireless phone or anything wireless. It doesn't make any sense to us. And then he went on to say that cryptocurrency is bigger than the wireless industry. It's like, wow, and there was so many other things that were said too, throughout that hearing. It was, if people are listening right now, if you haven't watched it, I'm sure you can find it on YouTube. It was, what was it? Early February.
Somewhere in mid-February, early February.
It's worth a watch, man. Yeah, that stuff is usually like paint, like watching paint dry. Yeah, I mean, I worked in D.C. for a little while. I've sat in on them. They are boring, but this one certainly wasn't. Especially if you're a stakeholder, right? If you get some skin in the game, and it was a great thing. And and other governments worldwide are starting to come around too. When things are bad, everybody starts to pile on, and they're trying to to act like they're coming in and they're going to save the world. But when things are good, it's the complete opposite. So it's all this. It is certainly fear. But I mean, look what just happened with Venezuela too. I mean, Venezuela now, the United States doesn't have really
by sanctions and such, and now they're turning to cryptocurrencies.
They raised I think it was $800 million in the first day. So that, I mean, that as far as the relationship with the United States is concerned, that the United States might not be so happy about that, but the people of Venezuela are probably happy about that because they're trying to save their country. And 5 years ago, I would say 5 years ago you didn't have that option. I mean, I know Bitcoin was created in 2009, but 5 years ago it just wasn't a reality. Now it's a reality. And that's awesome, man. And whether it works, and hopefully it does, is one thing, but it's an option now, you know what I mean? And that's also, again, kind of goes back to the opportunity of just your average everyday people. You have options now, you know what I mean? And that's just awesome. I actually just got, I'm excited to get it. I just got a Shift card, which is essentially a debit card that is tied to my wallet, my Coinbase wallet, and it if I want to go out and buy something and for US dollars, I can. And what it does is it shifts the Bitcoin that's in there into US dollars, and the retailer doesn't know any different. And when LightPay comes out with theirs, I'm probably going to get one of those too. And so it's changing. Cryptocurrency is changing the way we conduct business and the way we think about currency, and it's awesome, and once it continues to adopt. So again, the reason why I said that is now you have choices. Like I have a friend, for a whole host of reasons, he can't open a bank account. He made some bad decisions in his life and he just can't open a bank account. And so I said, well, look, man, but he still wants to. I mean, he's not a bad person. It just, it is what it is. And so I said, look, man, you have options now. You open up a Coinbase account, you get a Shift card, you open up you get a Litecoin wallet, and you get a Lite Pay debit card, and now you can go and take your wife out to dinner and not feel like a jerk, just because you made some bad decisions, when you were younger. So those options are there now, and that's exciting for people, and I also understand, I know I'm like kind of just, rambling on here, but I also understand that can also create bad actors and criminals, and et cetera. But
overall,
it doesn't matter. Like if a criminal's going to be a criminal, man. Like if they want to go, you want to go to Stop and Shop, is where I'm located, the grocery store, and buy, $10,000 in American Express gift cards. No one's stopping you. And then you take that $10,000 and you ship it to Mexico and buy, a couple kilos of Coke or whatever a kilo. A criminal is going to be a criminal. They're always going to find a way. So cryptocurrency.
It's funny you mentioned the criminal aspect though, because there was a recent report. I think it was a month ago about kind of the transactions that actually that go into like dark web websites, and it was at this point for Bitcoin, it was only like around like 1 to like 5% of all transactions even go to the dark web. So majority transactions are just legitimate.
Yeah, the other exciting part too of so in my world, right, of infomercials, like anything else, we need to substantiate what we're saying, even if it's a book. I mean, I can get into a whole First Amendment argument, but even if it's a book, we substantiate what we say. And so we were going over the show itself, and and there's a couple things that I say that it just throws people for a loop. One is the thing I already said before: $1 was worth close to $30 million at one point. So I show them, it's easy to do that, right? And then the other thing I said in the show, I said people are literally making millions of dollars in minutes. And even my own, I have attorneys that work for me, and they're like, well, geez, what? Like, how is that possible? And then here's the exciting part. And go back to this tied into the criminal thing you're saying. I said, look, I showed my lawyer. I said, let's go to blockchain.info, right? And he says, okay, so let's type in whatever your key is, your public key is. So you type in a public key, and then you can see literally every single transaction that's ever been conducted with that key. And anybody who does anything in the world of Bitcoin or any public blockchain for that matter, as is public, it's immutable, it's there forever, and the world can see it. Now, they don't know it's me or they don't know it's you, but I can easily prove that statement of people making millions of dollars in minutes, because my own lawyer said to me, he goes, Mike, he goes, I got this one. I could see this key right here. This guy right here is literally he's making $1 million like every 5 minutes. And I'm like, yeah, because I'm not making this shit up. This is real, But you can go back and you can do that. So as far as the criminal aspect of it is concerned, look, the government is getting hip to it. All governments are getting hip to it, and it's it's not going to be as easy to hide, from governments as people think. But then, you're also, you got Monero or Zcash, which the way it works is it essentially kind of vaporizes. So it's pretty easy to disguise payment using a Monero or a Zcash. And why would you want to use that if you're not a criminal? Well, I haven't been able to answer that question yet.
Well, I can see it be applicable for countries that have stricter like political issues going on, like if you're in China or such and you're a political activist, you probably want Monero to be spending things and exchanging goods rather than anything else.
There you go. There's the answer. Yeah, I mean, the other answer, I was thinking the same thing, is that, even governments might even want to use it, so that so let's say the United States wants to fund a coup, in whatever country, they use cryptocurrency, and it's virtually impossible for it to be found, because rather than sending, bombers full of cash, now they just use cryptocurrency, and it's almost, and that, depending on which cryptocurrency they use, it's difficult to trace. So, I mean, that's exciting. I mean, everything about it is exciting. But the blockchain itself is awesome. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I knew you could do it, but I had never sat down. I literally just did this yesterday. I sat down and we're looking at a computer, and it was an interesting thing. We found this one guy. And this is the other thing too. We all talk about this, how there's billionaires that we don't even know about. But we found this one guy in 2000 or gal or whatever. We found this one public key that bought 500,000 Bitcoin in 2011. And we went, and there was it was like November 13th, 2011, and we were like, all right, well, let's look at the price. And the price at that time was $2.43. So that's like, like $1.2 million, right? Today, that's worth $5.8 billion. And you can see that same key hasn't done anything with it. It hasn't even moved it. It's still there. They did do some small transactions, probably just to see if they could move it or whatever. But that's crazy. Like, you can see that, and that's exciting. And it's like, so if you want to say something or if you do say something and it's not accurate, and you say, well, prove it. The blockchain, I don't know. I feel like I'm the one that has coined this, but Satoshi said it's a trustless system, right? Yeah. But it's really, I think it's more of a trust but verify system. In other words, through the decentralization aspect of cryptocurrency, that there are others, third parties out there that are essentially verifying whether or not that it did in fact happen. And I call it a trust but verify because you trust that it's happening. And if you really wanted to verify that it did happen, you just go to the blockchain. Yeah, it's awesome.
Okay, so we had a giant scope conversation about blockchain in general. I'm going to bring it back and focus a bit on you. So you're doing this new mining operation. So why did you decide to pick up mining?
Yeah. So first of all, again, I keep going. I didn't know. I didn't understand it. But I was like, man, okay. So I started to think about, as an entrepreneur, how can I leverage the assets that I have here, the infrastructure that I have here? Literally, my call center was wired up. This one particular call center that I have and I have a few, but this one that's in my main office has like 100 cubes, and they were all wired up in different on different circuits for a reason, so that if one goes down, then not everybody goes down, right? And so we spent all this money on electricity, and then I started just learning a little bit about mining. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go out and buy one of these things. I literally bought one on eBay for a stupid amount of money. And I'm like, let me just plug it in and see what happens. It was kind of I've lost more money at a craps table, but it still wasn't. It was still a stupid amount of money. So I buy this thing. I plug it in. It was an ASIC by Bitmain, right? And 14 terahash. And I plug it in, and it, I literally did it myself. I do have a CIO here. He's an actual Mensa. I always tell people that because I can say it. He can't. He sounds like a douchebag if he says he's a Mensa, but he is. And so, but I did it myself. I mean, I was literally, I plugged it in. I plugged in the power ports. I took the Ethernet, plugged it into our network, made sure it was on an outside net, it wasn't connected to any of our other stuff. And then I got on Antpool and I was literally watching a YouTube video on how to do it, and boom, I'm mining Bitcoin. I'm like, wow. That was pretty easy. And then we started looking at how much it was net profiting a day. And I said to my CFO, I said, look, man, why don't we start buying some of these things? Because here are some of the things that I have challenges with in my business. No call, no shows. In other words, people just don't show up, right? Yeah. I got health insurance I love being able to provide for people, but as a business owner, it just every single day it continues to get harder and harder and harder. So it just becomes more and more expensive. But you got unemployment insurance. You got, just dealing with people. And a lot of times where the town I'm in is the town I grew up in. A lot of these people that worked for me that I went to high school with, and it's difficult dealing with these people. So I'm like, let's just start plugging in these machines. And every day they work. Yeah. They don't talk back. They don't, They just do their thing. And they make money. And so that's why I started doing it. So then I was like, all right, so that was Bitcoin. So we started, buying, these machines. And then I'm working with with Bitmain directly, and I'm also working with brokers because these machines aren't easy to get. And so I'm buying them at a better price, and we're just lining them up, And then I started, I'm like, all right, well, what else can I mine? Because I didn't even know so I can mine Litecoin. I'm like, all right, cool. Let's start mining Litecoin. The machines that I have can also mine Bitcoin Cash. Let's see what that looks like on a day-to-day basis. And then I was like, all right, well, what else? And so I come to find out one of my brothers, who also works for me, he started building rigs, and he was mining from Monero. And I didn't really know much about Monero until I started talking to him. He's like, yeah, I'm mining from Monero. I'm building these GPU rigs. And, he's got a 9th grade education, but he's obviously a smart guy, and he's building these things. He's got his apartment. He's set up. He's got these machines all over the place, right? And it looks like something like a technology nightmare, but they're making money. And I'm like, wow. I'm like, I wonder if we could do the same thing, just, maybe a little more organized and, and scalable. So I said to him, I said, hey, why don't you start building some for me? So we started building some for me. So now we're mining Monero, we're mining Ethereum, we're mining Litecoin, we're mining Bitcoin Cash, and soon we'll be mining Sia Coin. And by the time these machines get there, hopefully they'll actually still be profitable because it's changing as far as the difficulty. But the reason why I got involved in mining is when I realized what was happening is that once that initial investment for the machine is paid off, then it's straight profit after that. And so the price of the currency that you're mining almost doesn't matter once your initial cost is paid for. And that part for me, I was like, wow. Now, when I was paying crazy money for these machines, it's going to take a year before they're paid off. But who cares? You know what I mean? All right, so I got to wait a year, right? So in a year it'll be now, but they're still generating revenue and they're still bringing stuff in, and I can sell that Bitcoin or Litecoin, whatever it is. I can sell it if I need it, So it's still coming. So in about a year, depending on now some of the other ones, 6 months, So in 6 months they paid for themselves, and then it's straight profit from there, and that's awesome. And and when I first started doing it, for the most part, you can't really do it at your house. But since my brother was doing it at his house, I said, do you think we could show people, the average everyday person how to build their own? He's like, yeah, I can certainly do that. So I have I'm sitting here in my radio studio, but I have a film production studio to my left. And so we spent like 4 or 5 hours, and I rigged up like 4 or 5 different cameras. I have them from up high and from the side and different angles. And my brother just built one, essentially live on camera. And we're editing it right now so that if they're a part of the Crushing Crypto community, they're going to be able to access that. And if they wanted to build a rig, and put it in their home, they could. And then another thing I did to prove the concept is I took some of these custom rigs that we built here that are mining for Ethereum, and I did plug them in my house, just to see what would happen, see if I blew a circuit or whatever. And as of, knock on wood, as of right now, I get, a bunch of them literally in my mechanical room in my basement when it's cool down there. There's, and they're just running, and, they're out there mining, Ethereum. Now, look, you're not going to get rich doing that. I think people think they're just going to, get lucky and all of a sudden they're going to get a windfall of like Ethereum or Bitcoin. That isn't how it works. But if you wanted to, if you wanted to get in that world and spend, you're talking thousands, you're not talking hundreds, and wanted to do that, you could, and you don't have to be a tech person. And I wanted to show people that because it's exciting.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I got into it. Except it was like when I was in high school, I got into GPU mining since I was big into gaming. I had it there, and I was like, cryptocurrencies started there. That was just kind of how I got like addicted to this whole industry. But
so what did you start? What did you start mining for?
Litecoin, actually.
Yeah.
It was like I think it was mid 2013 or 2014. It was one of the two, and I think it was like a sophomore, junior in high school, and I just started mining Litecoin because I kind of missed out on Bitcoin. So I was like, I'm gonna start with Litecoin, let this go out, and boom. But yeah, it's very simple to mess with mining. The only real concerns you have is like heating. Make sure it doesn't overheat, and that's like really the main thing.
And electric, right? I mean, it's just basic math, right? Yeah. So we started plugging these things here in Mass, and Mass is like, I think I just saw an article, it's like one of the top 5 states not to have a mining operation because of our electric. But yeah, I'm also the type of person where I'm not going to wait for the light to be green and everything to be perfect in order to start something. And so we started them here. We just signed a lease in Illinois, and we're gonna move most of our machines at a specific mining facility. That's all it's going to be doing in Illinois, because the price is about 9 cents a kilowatt. Now you could go to Washington State and it's cheaper as well, or even Oregon. I think it's cheaper, but I actually have people on the ground in Illinois that can watch these things and go there if something goes wrong. So we're doing that, and it's something that like you said, anybody can do. I mean, even like you said, these graphics cards machines can still mine Litecoin, and one other thing, I guess, I was thinking about you in high school. That's just awesome that you were able to do that. But I was thinking, a lot of people, I think, like you kind of what you touched upon, you said, well, it was too late for Bitcoin. It's not too late. It's not too late for Bitcoin. It's harder than it was when you were in high school. It's not too late for Litecoin. Litecoin, you have 81 million coins versus 21 million Bitcoins. It's not too late for Ethereum. Ethereum is going to change how the mining world works, probably sometime in 2019 from proof of work to proof of stake. And what that really means from a mining perspective is that if you're still mining that, you're just going to get fees. You're not going to get Ethereum, but if that happens, but we'll talk about that. You can talk about that later. But you can get involved. And again, you're not going to get rich unless you have $1 million. Yeah, but if you wanted to just, like you said, have fun and plug some of these suckers in. And the other interesting thing too is that, like what you said, is the heating aspect of it, right? So when I'm not in, I've never smoked a cigarette. I've never smoked a joint. I'm not in the marijuana world, but I know people that are, and I know people that, have, Massachusetts became legal and you could have 6 plants in your house, right? So they're creating these little grow rooms, and I saw one of them, and the guy was showing me what he was doing. He was redistributing the heat through a filter to heat his house. And I'm like, that is really cool. And so people are also doing the same thing with their mining rigs, right? And so they're redistributing that heat to heat their house during the winter here, which is a brilliant idea. So there's a dual purpose for it. You can certainly do that. You could just literally redistribute the heat. Like if I had these mining machines in my main floor, I could probably heat a good portion of my house with them, which is awesome.
Yeah, it's actually kind of like when you mentioned that, it's kind of crazy like how many purposes you can find just being involved with crypto, and how many different things that can come up being involved with it. And you mentioned the energy rates and stuff like that. There's this one miner that's pretty close to me. He's in Chattanooga that I've been keeping up with. I know he's based in Chattanooga because we have the whole TVA here, so it's hydroelectric and nuclear energy. And I think the rates for here is like around 7 to 8 cents per kilowatt or something like that.
Yep, so, that's great.
Yeah, that's a big thing if you're trying to mine at scale. But for like your average person, that doesn't really matter too much because you can just get a GPU, get your feet wet, and start like getting to know what crypto really is, just mining a little bit.
And that's exactly, that's such a great point because you just start to learn about it, right? I didn't know what these things were going to do until I plugged them in. And one of the best ways to learn anything is 2 ways: by teaching and doing, right? And so, you can have someone talk to you while you're blue in the face, right? But really the best ways to learn something is by doing. And so don't be afraid to get involved, to buy cryptocurrency. It's still a new, somewhat esoteric thing for people. They don't know what a digital wallet, and that's why I wrote the book Crushing Crypto. And so that people show I didn't know how to do it either, and there are things that might seem foreign to you, as far as the boarding process, you got to sometimes, depending on which one you use, you got to take a selfie with your license or a selfie with your credit card or debit card, or my father did it and they actually had facial recognition. I've never even seen that before. And so there are all these things that you just don't know unless you do it. Once you do it, then you know it, and then you can then move forward. There's a saying: to know and not to do is not to know. So you need to just do it, right? Don't be afraid because I was talking to my producer a while ago. Like the word crypto just seems negative.
Yeah,
it seems right.
Scary.
Yeah, it sounds like this weird thing, you know what I mean? And you know what? And I felt the same way too, so crypto, what is that, And so people are afraid just of the term. I know it. I've talked to people about it. There's psychologically that word crypto freaks them out. So, don't let that freak you out. Get involved in it. Open up a wallet. Throw $100 at it. Throw $50 at it. Whatever it is, like you said, buy, if you have a computer, and if you just bought a computer in the past couple of years and you wanted to, mine for Monero, you could. You don't even need to do anything. You just mine from your GPU, not even your graphics card. You could just mine. You're not going to make a lot of money, okay? You might even lose money on Monero, But it's just like you said, just getting your feet wet to learn a little bit about it. If you then say, well, I might want to mine for Litecoin or Ethereum, and you want to do it through your computer, you go to newegg.com, you go to bestbuy.com, you get on eBay, whatever, and you buy, a Radeon graphics card and a power supply. And again, you literally just plug these things in. It's not that difficult. You plug them in, and then you might make $2 a day, but making $2 a day is better than making $0.
So kind of talked about mining, but there seems like there's other opportunities kind of similar to mining that's popping up. So I want to see if you knew anything about them or explore these options. Sometimes with coins, you can run nodes that give you, I think it's fees for most of the part for some of these coins, but sometimes these coins incentivize people to run nodes and kind of help maintain their network, and you get a certain amount of fee paid back into what you put in.
Yeah, like Neo. Yeah. Like that's what Neo's doing. Yeah, and that's also exciting. I mean, I call them essentially dividends. And you know what? To be honest with you, I'm not 100% sure how that whole thing works.
Yeah, me too.
But yeah, it's essentially, if I would had to break it down in the most basic terms, it's essentially, so if you hold Neo, Neo essentially uses the Neo that you own to essentially do the same thing that a miner would do to verify the transactions. Yeah. It's just a different way of doing it, and how they incentivize you to basically use your Neo is they pay you in another coin called gas. And so there are other coins that are being created off of the Neo platform, just like Ethereum. So Neo has its own blockchain that people are developing new coins off of that are using the same concept, right? So like, for instance, Neo is not mineable, right? You can't mine, or Ripple is not mineable. Ripple doesn't pay out like that as well. But yeah, it's awesome. So Neo, I have a position in Neo, and every second of the month you get a distribution of gas based off of how much you're holding. That's pretty cool. Again, I haven't really sat down and looked at the tech side of it, but that's essentially what's going on. So you have Neo, and in order for the Neo blockchain to verify the transactions that are happening, they're somehow drawing essentially the power from your Neo that you hold in order to verify those transactions still through a decentralized world. That's as if you did it, as if you verified it, right? And then as a result of that, you're being rewarded in gas. And so it's similar to mining, except you're just not buying equipment.
Yeah.
Right?
There's also some coins that kind of encourage you to have like dedicated kind of servers up to maintain the network. And there's also, I read something about this new kind of experimental thing that's happening on the Ethereum Classic. Like they made kind of an experimental fork for testing this, and it's using smart contracts like maintain the network themselves. I'm not exactly sure how that works, but that will be something interesting to see, like if coins use smart contracts to kind of maintain themselves instead of having these other like decentralized nodes or miners.
Yeah, I mean, it's just amazing, right? What these tech guys are figuring out. When we talk about that again, the term smart contract, that's just another thing. You see, there's people, the fear that people also have about this world. One, again, I think that word crypto freaks people out. But there are all these new terms that people need to learn, and people just don't like change. But one of the things that I've learned in my life is the only thing that's constant is in fact change. Warren Buffett, who hates cryptocurrency, he said, stick to what you know and you'll be successful. Well, that's an antiquated way to think. You can't think like that anymore. You need to actually start to think about, what's going on in this world. So, yeah, I mean, it's all these different things that are happening. Like, so smart contract is amazing. So people are using this, smart contracts, which is essentially a smart contract is in the most basic terms is if this, then that. Yeah. So that's the easiest way to. So if you do this, then that or this will happen. And through a decentralized world. So if, you want to sell if you and I agree to buy my house, then I will send you Bitcoin, right? And so, that is happening within the world of smart contracts. So people are literally buying property using these smart contracts. And the interesting thing about that is the disruption aspect of it, but the disruption aspect of it as it disrupts the third parties that are involved that are unnecessary. The banks, lawyers. I'm an attorney, but I believe that real estate attorneys are just pushing paper. I don't think it's practicing law. Notary publics, like all these other things. And so how do you prove that you own that house? Well, you prove it by the blockchain and through a smart contract. And you can say, here's the smart contract, here's the blockchain transaction, and boom, there it is. And that's it. I mean, that's wild, and it's happening, and it has happened. So that's just another kind of aspect of what is evolving within the world of cryptocurrency. And again, you know what? I know enough to know to have a reasonably intelligent conversation about it, but I cannot sit down with you and show you probably really how a smart contract actually works from the mechanical aspects of it. But it's the basic formula: if this, then that.
But it's funny you mentioned the lawyer aspect. I talked to one not too long ago, and they were kind of forward thinking enough to kind of go into the more realm of being the go-to to being like the intermediary for when the smart contracts go wrong. So that's what they were focusing on, because we've already seen some of those situations happen too.
Right. Realistically, what you're talking about too is you're really almost talking about a trustee scenario, right? And so, but what you're doing is you're cutting out the actual trustee. There isn't a person there, right? It's just through using technology. And so, you're right. So what happens if you and I make a deal and I don't follow through? Well, you're going to need somebody to come in and fix that, or something is going to have to come in and fix that. So what happens there creates a whole new industry. The smart contract thing has existed since the beginning of time. It's just being using technology and the blockchain to cut out the third parties in the decentralized world. It's not Bank of America telling you that it happened. It's not even the parties themselves saying that it's happened. It's the blockchain that says that it did or didn't in fact happen. And that's again, I keep using the term exciting because it is, but also people need to understand that if you are a real estate lawyer, well, you better pay attention to this stuff, man, because your job is going to be gone in the next few years. If you work at the Registry of Deeds, which is still this old, like archaic, antiquated way of doing business in the United States, literally there's like a book you go to and it's handwritten. It's crazy. If you work there, you better hope that you're retiring soon, or if you just started there, you better find another job, because that world is getting disrupted. There are so many worlds that are getting disrupted through blockchain, which is good for the consumer. It's good for you and me. It's good for the citizens of this planet. Not good for big centralized entities that are controlling this world. Now, again, cryptocurrency
kind of bad for middlemen.
Yeah, and especially bad for middle. Like, what's the point? Like, what I need you for? You know what I mean? Like, I need you to sit there and just check boxes, and then I can pay you, a 1% or whatever. It's a joke. We talked about earlier when I talked about, the credit card processing thing. And so, I'm looking at, a bunch of different companies or organizations that are essentially developing, platforms that truly are outside of credit card processing altogether. Mm-hmm. And that's awesome, because the credit card processing world, a lot of people don't know this, they're like the mafia. And they can hurt people pretty bad, and I've been hurt by them, and I'm a good person, and I know I'm a good person, and I do great things, with my company and for the community. But because of what I do, I sell dietary supplements in what they call a card not present environment, and I put people on continuity programs. I'm just deemed a bad actor when in fact I'm not. And so if you can just get rid of them because they don't like me, well, then I can continue to run my business and continue to do good things for not only the community but for the world, because now I have options. See, I didn't have options before. Now I have options. I take Bitcoin now. I have BitPay, and we're looking at even potentially integrating Coinbase's version of essentially PayPal into our operation. We're looking at, again, what LightPay will look like, but I'm really excited about looking at how you want to buy some of my goods or services, and maybe you do have a card, a Visa card that has a number on it. Well, there's technology that's being developed now that where essentially just pulls from that card, but it pushes Visa out of the equation, and it pushes the bank out of the equation and just draws from crypto. Again, essentially using the term shape shifting, and that's again, I'm going to say it again. That's exciting.
Yeah, it seems like the big theme here for this discussion is a lot of opportunities and excitement.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
So this has really been a very fun conversation. Probably one of the funnest I've had so far. I will give you the floor for whatever you want to talk about. Like, what are you doing that you want to promote or get out to the people for a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, sure. Well, again, first, thanks for having me. I think what you're doing is a great thing. And again, what I'm trying to do in this world is to educate people about the opportunity that's there. And with that opportunity, there is obviously going to be a financial gain on my end as well. But at the end of the day, I think people just, goes back to what I've been saying throughout this whole conversation is people need to pay attention. They need to understand it, or they'll get left behind. I wrote my book called Crushing Crypto, How Anybody Can Build a Fortune in Cryptocurrency, originally just for my friends and for my family members because they saw what I was doing and they didn't understand it. And I just, I grew up poor, man. I grew up with nothing. I grew up in the projects. My mother's HIV positive. My stepfather died of AIDS. A brother of mine passed away of an overdose. Another brother of mine did time. A kid I grew up with is in jail for life for murder. So I grew up really, really tough, and opportunities were never presented to me. And there's a lot of people that are just like me. And this is really, truly your opportunity to get involved in something that is truly the beginning of the beginning. So, if you want more information about me, you can just go to joincrushingcrypto.com, and then crypto is spelled CRYPTO. I found out people have a tough time spelling that. But you can also just find me. It's at Mike Alden, MikeAlden, 2012. Again, at Mike Alden 2012 on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat. I'm everywhere. And I'll also try and reach out and help people if you have questions, and I'll do my best. I'm not an expert in cryptocurrency. I'm not an expert in Bitcoin, but I am an expert in business, and I know an opportunity when I see one. And this truly is. One last thing I said to people, and I heard this someone else say that. I said, cryptocurrency is bigger than the creation of the internet. And people said, well, that's such a crazy statement to say. And I haven't been able to close the loop yet, And I was talking to a friend of mine who's a motivational speaker and a business consultant, and he knows nothing about cryptocurrency. And I was educating him, and I told him that. I said, yeah, I tell people all the time how cryptocurrency is bigger than the creation of the internet. And I truly believe that, but I haven't been able to close that statement. And he said to me, you know why? I said, no, I don't know why. I just know. Please tell me. He said, because everybody uses currency. And so that's really it. Again, this is bigger than the creation of the internet. It's bigger than anything you've ever seen. And I just want people to understand that if you're alive right now, you are living in this moment. Like, it is bigger than the gold rush. It's bigger than as if you had property and all of a sudden you tap down and you realize you had oil on your property. It's bigger than that. It's bigger than anything you've ever seen. When you hear about the Rockefellers and things and dynasties like that, like, you have the opportunity to be written about in history books because you paid attention. And that's why I'm so excited for people, and I just want people to get in.
Well, I hope people definitely follow this encouragement that's been on this podcast today. I have to thank you for being on here. You're very well spoken and very entertaining, and you the way you discuss things you kind of learn to break it down, and I really appreciate that. Something for me to aspire to personally.
Well, thanks, man. Thanks for having me. You know what? I always tell people, talk to me like I'm talk to me like I'm in second grade so I can understand it. And that's a lot of times that's just that, you just need to do that so people can understand it. So, well, thanks for having me. And what you're doing is great. Make sure you keep doing it, man. Keep getting people out there. Keep providing this content, because at the end of the day, you're helping people. And thanks again for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And this has been another Crypto Spendthrift interview session. Keep watching, rate the podcast, and thanks for listening.